In this episode, I will discuss the power of social proof and how to leverage video testimonials. My name is Alexej and I help SaaS founders scale. My guest today is Sam Shepler, the visionary founder behind Testimonial Hero. I met Sam in the Hampton community and I was really fascinated to hear how he nailed down on his ideal customer persona. That made his marketing efficiency be super good, and being a bootstrap founder, that's really important. Really wanted to share the story with you, so let's dive into it. Hi, Sam.
Hey, Alexej.
Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right. So, for context, for our listeners and viewers, Sam Shepler is a second-time founder. He's a founder of Testimonial Heroes, an agency which basically allows SaaS and professional services firms to get and do better video testimonials. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We really believe in the power of customer stories to build trust and ultimately close deals faster. And there's something that you get with video that you just don't get with written text, because about 95% of human communication is actually nonverbal. It comes from body language and tone of voice. So it's great to have as much social proof as you can. You got to have that logo rack, and you probably have to have a few written testimonials as well. But increasingly, if you want to build trust with new prospects, you can't forget video testimonials as well. And that's where we fit in.
Awesome. And so that's your second business. And the first one was in a similar space. It was a video production agency, which you sold. And then 6 years ago, you started Testimonial Hero, right? And you're now at roughly $3 million, going strong. So maybe let's kick off with the founding story, right? I guess, first of all, how did you come up with that idea?
I came up with the idea based on what I learned in my previous business. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of founders, if they think about it, is that they either learn something at their day job, like as an employee, they had an insight, as an employee in their day job, or they had an insight in their previous company that, leads to their next company. So that was definitely the case for me. And that's also, I think, worth noting, because if for a lot of founders, sometimes if the best way to get your best business idea is to sometimes just spend more time working in the job. And that, because you have to have a certain amount of, things going on to, get the actual experience, to get the insights for, whatever idea that you want to work on. So in my case, it was a realization from my prior agency. It was basically just one of the many services that we focused on in my prior agency was video testimonials amongst, 10 other service lines. And when I, had a small acquisition of my first agency, worked at the acquirer for a little bit of time, and then wanted to go out on my own. Long story short, I basically took the philosophy of, less but better. How can we, instead of doing all of these things, how can we focus and just be the absolute best in the world and take a very innovative approach to video testimonials?
Makes sense. So you took a, productized service approach, and many people would ask you, why do another agency almost, instead of maybe building a software business? What were your pros and cons when you made that decision?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a great question. So, I did try initially to do a software business, actually, for maybe about a year, and didn't really have a lot of traction on it. It was a consumer software, idea that I was working on, and basically eventually got to the point where I was like, oh, I'll just kind of do this video testimonial agency on the side. And, it never really initially thought Testimonial Hero would be a big thing that now supports my, my family and everything. I'm married. I have 2 kids. And yeah, but I mean, it just kind of took off, right? It got product market fit. We did a lot of things right along the way. We also made a lot of mistakes, but like that, it wasn't initially like the plan for it to be the main thing. Initially, I did want to do a software business. However, I think on a risk adjusted basis, especially as someone who's not from a technical background, I actually think that services and agencies are way more likely to, basically be more successful than bootstrapping a software company. It's really hard to bootstrap a software company, especially if you don't have a technical background. And I think that services and agencies get a really bad, they have a bad reputation that is fully not deserved. Professional services can be a great business. They're, you should be able to run a professional service at, roughly, 20% EBITDA at scale. And it's not incredibly hard to create, a multi-million-dollar professional services firm. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty, that can be a pretty lucrative outcome. I think it just obviously in the echo chamber and the ecosystem and the echo chamber, that is a lot of the tech world. I mean, no VCs want to invest in services business. So so that I think is part of the reason, if you think about it, like, why I think services have gotten such a bad rap over the years is because, like, from the VC community, they're always going to kind of be like, I mean, that's not their incentive. Like they need SaaS revenue to drive SaaS multiples to drive, 10x, 100x return on investments. But if you're bootstrapping and you want to live, life and have complete autonomy and, make a great income and have a lot of freedom, when done right, agencies and services businesses can be just way more likely to achieve that result than a SaaS company, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. I tend to agree there. Not only I think it's really difficult to build a software business by bootstrapping it, and it's just like, even if you look at all the VC funded software companies out there, right, like the majority does fail. And on a risk adjusted basis, paying yourself a really decent salary and then scaling, and really the power of compounding makes a lot of sense. And yeah, obviously in the Hampton community, we see so many agency owners who have, 10, 15 plus million revenue agencies. I think many people also forget, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, these are agencies ultimately as well, one of the biggest businesses out there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, professional services firms are massive. Like you just named a few there. Obviously, Deloitte, like, all these consulting firms, huge industry, and it's professional services. And I think honestly, I resisted, I kind of drank because I grew up, started my career in Boston in a kind of pretty good tech ecosystem. And with my first company, Skyscope, I always, I would be kind of I would go to these networking events, and talk to VCs, talk to other founders. And like, I think I always had a little bit of like a chip on my shoulder because, we were there, but we were never like in the spotlight, right? Because the SaaS companies are in the spotlight, the VCs are in the spotlight, right? And after I sold my first agency, I definitely, like, prestige is a very powerful thing. And I think I felt that, like, the draw of that prestige, like I wanted to, do something in software because yes, I mean, when you hit it right, the software opportunities are incredibly massive. But again, on a risk adjusted basis, plus on an autonomy basis, like what do you it's like, are you willing to report to a board? Like, do you want to have that kind of relationship? Do you want to work for, because when you report, like, there's a lot of good reasons to take funding. I'm not anti-funding. Like, there's a lot of, if you're working on a massive opportunity, you're going to need, you know, you're going to need venture capital to take advantage of that opportunity. But I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, I really value the part of entrepreneurship that gives me a lot of control and a lot of freedom and a lot of autonomy, and to actually work for myself, not work for, a board, at least at this stage of my life, especially with, 2 young kids. So yeah, I think that's something that agencies can really provide, because they're really asset light to get off the ground. And, pretty much immediately they're immediately profitable when done correctly. So, and then, yeah, and I would say it's only been like the past 1 or 2 years that I've actually fully committed to agencies. I've been slowly but surely, like, every year I shed a little bit of like the conditioning that I received living in like startup ecosystems. But yeah, I'm slowly, coming around to how they can be like just incredibly great businesses. And also, thankfully, a lot of other people have come around to that too, including private equity firms and other acquirers. Like, the market for professional services acquisitions and roll-ups and, PE, especially once you get above 10 million in revenue, which we're not yet, but especially once you get above that 10 million revenue point as an agency or professional services firm, you're going to have people wanting to acquire you constantly. So yeah, I think a lot has changed in a good way, and a lot of people are in the capital markets are also seeing the value of agencies and professional services firms.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's maybe talk a bit about your customers, right? And so you have 2 types of customers, and probably the majority of your customers are actually, funny enough, SaaS founders. And then the other half, or the other whatever part, are professional services firms, right? And we'll probably also get into the point, why video testimonials and testimonials in general could be so much of value, and increase, the ability to monetize as well. But maybe in terms of your customers, right? Like, first of all, how did you pick this ICP, ideal customer persona? And yeah, why did you not, keep a more diverse group of customer types?
Yeah, for sure. We do have a couple other verticals as well that we serve, but I would say like the majority of our customers are B2B SaaS, B2B technology companies. And I would include cybersecurity in there as well. We have a lot of cybersecurity customers. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. I mean, a lot of people have heard the term that the niches are in the riches are in the niches, and I mean that can definitely be true for sure. I mean, just some practical considerations. Once you do a lot of work in one industry, you become known in that industry. It just becomes easier. Messaging, you can, have a much tighter messaging on your website and all of your materials when you're speaking to one industry or fewer industries, because every industry has their own lingo that is their own language that is coded in the sense that, like, for example, for like B2B, for B2B marketers, B2B SaaS, like, they think about creating pipeline, right? But if I'm selling to a marketer that sells like direct to consumer e-commerce stuff, like, they're not thinking about creating pipeline. Like that's not like part of their vocabulary, right? Like, so when you focus on an industry or a vertical, or even like a sub vertical, you're able to just use the language that speaks to those people way more directly. And yeah, I think for us, you also want to think about, kind of product market fit from a pricing perspective, because in the perceived value of your solution. because for us, I mean, we are a premium provider in the video testimonial space, being that we are an agency. Like, people come to us when they want the best video testimonials in the world for remote video testimonials, and really innovative ways to do global on-site video testimonials. So we're not really, a budget shop. And so like, it wouldn't make sense for us to go after people who don't have a significant average order value. And that's another, I think, characteristics of, B2B SaaS is like, typically the average order value and the lifetime value of a customer is significant. So those companies, it makes sense for them to invest, several $1,000s in a video testimonial to acquire a customer with a lifetime value of, 20, 30, 50, much more to them, 50,000 plus. Right. So I think, it's all of those things. And, but there's pros and cons to it, I think, as well. Like, we found out, we grew massively in 2021 with the whole SaaS market. So we went from, doing less than $1 million in 2019 to doing, over 3 million in 2021. Just kind of riding that frothy economic wave. But we've also, been kind of, having to fight that SaaS downturn, right, over the past couple of years, where we've seen funding kind of dry up and more focus on efficiency and profitability, and so it's really like two sides of the sword can cut both ways when you are so vertically focused. I think that's something to be aware of. I still would do it the same way we've done it. I don't think I'd change anything. I think it's just something to think about and be aware of, is that, if you're really focused on one vertical, you can sort of be hampered when that vertical has sort of a crisis or a downturn.
Did you focus on the SaaS vertical with your video production agency, before Testimonial Heroes as well?
So before Testimonial Hero, I would say we didn't really focus on the SaaS vertical. That my prior production agency, it was more of a typical, trying to be, be for everyone and do everything. Like, kind of like that was like my first big, relatively significant business. So like, I was kind of just like a starting out entrepreneur at that point. So usually when you start out, you're just like happy for people to like pay you, and you're like, just like, okay, this company wants to make a video, great, we'll do it. Well, so no, I think we didn't specifically focus on it too much, but we definitely like realized, a lot, these companies are willing to invest in marketing, and they're good prospects. So that definitely did inform a lot of the strategy with Testimonial Hero, the learnings from my first agency.
And then for some of the readers, they probably ask themselves, well, what's the difference in hiring you guys instead of just doing a Loom video, right? Or like asking the client to do a Loom video. Could you just give us a quick brief, what is it that makes you so much better?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends, it depends what you need. If you think you can get away with a Loom video, maybe you should do that. But I would argue, like, you don't really, if you ask a customer for a testimonial video, you don't really, you get like one shot at it. Like, cause it's kind of like a big favor for a customer to do. So it's like, if you're willing to like roll the dice and kind of like get back, like whatever you get back, that's kind of one of the risks of going with like a low approach, is like, you get one shot at this. How important is this customer to you? Like, how important is this customer story? Are you willing to get something back that may just not be that good at all? On multiple angles, like the content might not be ideal. The framing might not be ideal. The quality might not be ideal. Like our biggest, one of the things we're most known for is creating the world's best remote video testimonials. So we have a unique process for creating video testimonials fully remotely with uncompromising quality. And it's also completely done for our clients. So, all they have to do is introduce us to their happy customer, and then we handle absolutely everything else. So we're writing the interview questions based on understanding of the strategy and context. We're scheduling with their customer. We're conducting the interview, and we have a technology that lets us control their testifying customer's smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
So we can actually, make sure that person is setting their smartphone up correctly, adjust the lighting, adjust the audio, adjust the focus. So we're literally remote recording
Mm-hmm.
on a really good camera, which is a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
Like webcams are kind of not that great compared to smartphones. Like smartphone cameras obviously are always, 5 years ahead of most webcams. And then we have a real executive producer on the call that understands how to conduct an interview and make it a conversation, make it authentic. Because if you just kind of ask someone to send you something, you don't really know what you're going to get. And you might get something, you don't have the opportunity to ask follow-up questions. So we're actually having a 30-minute interview with your customer from an expert who knows exactly what the strategic goals are and is able to make your customer comfortable and draw out all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we get the 30-minute interview back, we have a team of 20 editors who all they do is edit video testimonials, and they're the best in the world at it. And they're going to take the best 90 to 120 seconds from that 30-minute interview and then create additional like ad units from it, and create additional, 60-second objection crushers that speak to your biggest questions, fears, and doubts that your buyers have in the sales process. So and then it's going to be high quality. So it's going to be like strategically aligned, still done remotely. It's going to be high quality enough that you can put it on your homepage as a $1 billion company. So we have $1 billion, startups and $1 billion plus, tech companies who use our remote video testimonials on their homepage, right? And that's the quality that we're delivering. And you're to your point earlier, it's like if you just record something on Zoom or ask someone to send you a Loom, like you're not gonna put that on your homepage unless you're like, a tiny company who doesn't like really, that quality doesn't matter as much. So that's kind of what you get with us is like when you want the, when you don't want to compromise and you also don't want to spend hours and hours doing it yourself, and you want a turnkey solution, and you want it to be strategically aligned so that the content specifically addresses the questions, fears, and doubts that your prospects have in the sales process, which we will actually do an exercise with our clients and help them understand their own sales process and their own objections and what the gaps are. That's really when, when people care about all those things, that's when they end up working with us and see value in it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then most clients, they hire you for a batch of client interviews then, rather than just one?
Yeah, we let people, do one just to test us out, because we're really confident that once they've tried it, they're going to absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm.
Once they see the results. But yeah, pretty quickly, most of our clients are spending, probably 15, 20, 30K a year with us. But if they wanted to get started for, $4,000 for a single remote testimonial, or, there or thereabouts, then that's also an option. But yeah, usually where customers are kind of figuring out, okay, like how many, well, first of all, what are they're thinking, okay, like what are the business problems that I'm running into right now? And like, how can I help address those with the voice of the customer? And based on all of those things, like how many stories do I need to capture? Like, do I have video testimonials for all of my key buyer personas? Do I have video testimonials that, that address all the different objections or questions that I'm going to get in my sales process? Do I have video testimonials that are helping with those things for different product lines, right? If I'm a multi-product company and I have different use cases and different products. So yeah, I mean, some customers are pretty happy with if they only have like one product, like maybe 3 or 4 testimonials a year is good. If they have multi-products and multiple use cases, they might need, much more.
Got it. So it seems that a lot of your customers are actually fairly large customers, right? And businesses. And I remember you were telling me that when it comes to your acquisition marketing, so client acquisition, you have a list of 1,500 companies who at least raise $20 million and have at least 100 employees, right? So I guess question one, how long did it take you to get to that specific ICP within the SaaS or, software companies ICP? And then the second point, how do you go about targeting these companies?
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question. Every year we get more clear on our ICP. And really, I think this past year, we looked at the data and, while a large percent of our revenue historically does come from smaller companies, the lifetime, like sub 100 employee companies, the lifetime value of that is sometimes less, is usually a lot less. So and then when you factor in the customer acquisition cost, which is still going to be the same, cost about the same to acquire a big company, or a ICP company as with a slightly smaller company. You still got to put them through the same sales process in general. We do want to think about making sure that we have, like, at a minimum, that 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio. So we've, and there's definitely exceptions, and that's why we also look at funding amounts too, because we're not going to turn down a company with 15 employees that just raised 20 million. Like, that's still probably very lucrative. So it's important to score, I think, and build that ICP list, or that TAM list, the total addressable market, on a couple of factors. But yeah, I think we just realized that, like, once a company's over about 100 headcount, they seem to be willing to invest a lot more in video testimonials. So we, it's not that we don't necessarily we can still work with smaller companies than that, but if we're spending a lot of money and running ads to those companies, we might as well only run ads to the companies that are best fit for us. So that's kind of my philosophy is you can advertise much more confidently when that you're spending money getting on only people that are good fits for you. And that's why I am a fan of basically advertising to a large list of named accounts that are manually verified whenever possible. And it still could be 8,000 accounts that are all it only takes a few hours to review a list of 8,000 accounts. Basically maybe 3 hours, I guess. But basically, if you have that list, then you can be very confident, spending your ad dollars to it, because every one of those companies, you want that they're actually a good fit. Versus when you use the platform data, if you use platform data, you're not uploading your own list, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to be serving ads to, companies that just are actually not a good fit, because all the platform data is unreliable, frankly. So I think that's, this is something that we're just learning and we're trying to make progress on, is bringing your own data to the party on these ad platforms and not relying on first party data instead of third party data, I think is a big, step forward. Then we're still pretty new in that journey, but we're seeing good progress, and we want to, to the extent possible, we always want to bring our own data to the party and not have to rely on any third-party platform data.
So if you were to split your customers right now, what's the percentage you got, let's say, from Google ads versus I don't know, LinkedIn ads versus word of mouth, and maybe versus are there any other channel I didn't mention?
Yeah, it's a good question. Honestly, I have no idea off the top of my head. I'd have to ask our head of marketing. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think we back in the good old days before cold email got very saturated, we did grow a lot with cold email.
Mm-hmm.
2021, especially like 2020, 2021. I think that's gotten a bit harder um,
Yeah.
as more people have kind of tried to exploit it. But yeah, I mean, there's just no silver bullets when it comes to channels, except for maybe bringing your own data to the party helps a lot. And other than that, I do think it's really just, it's a lot of just realizing that, not everyone's going to be in market. It's
Yeah.
very few people in your market or even in market, but you kind of still have to be everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
so when they're ready,
Mm-hmm.
they'll remember you, and come back to you. And that's when it helps to have that vertical focus. Is it's like, if you're not vertically focused, it's just very hard to be everywhere to anyone, to your buyers, if you're kind of just spreading your marketing around in different industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And we actually saw that as well. We became way more memorable when we said we are SaaS focused agency, instead of just a growth agency.
Yeah.
Cool. And so, what are, very, I guess, like a basic question, right? Like, but what is the benefit of having a really good video testimonial and that social proof out there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the benefit of video testimonials and social proof is that they increase trust. And trust is really the currency of business, that nothing happens without trust. So you can kind of think about it at different levels. And ideally, you want to have social proof throughout your entire buyer journey. If you are going up head to head, like, unless your product is so well loved and you have no competitors, and people are going to buy it anyway. Like, whoever tells the better customer stories usually wins in a head to head battle. So I think that's also just becoming increasingly important in this, in 2024, the time we're in. Now we live in a world where we live in the kind of the buyer 2.0 world, where buyers want to and are going to do their own research before they talk to a sales rep. So, they're going to, it used to be in the old days that, like, people would talk to a sales rep much earlier in the process, and like you could kind of build that trust and rapport via, your sales reps, and sales reps could kind of guide them through the process. And then you would kind of, verify everything that the sales rep said at the end of the journey with like a reference call or a case study. Now the sales process doesn't even start
Mm-hmm.
unless there's enough trust to begin with. So it's like, if you don't have enough social proof earlier in your buyer journey, you're just not even going to book those calls, basically, like that you would otherwise. So, and then, just on a macro level, when levels of trust, when levels of skepticism increase, like, which I would say, like, right now, just it is true across the board. Like, everyone's like a little bit skeptical and jaded of like many things, for multiple reasons, whether it's like, you know, kind of like deep fakes and certain political things that have happened over the couple of years, and like, just like, society is a little bit jaded, um and as they should be, frankly. And when sort of skepticism rises, you need to have an equal, like, offset of that and trust building if you want to achieve the same results as you did previously.
Got it.
And video testimonials are just one of the best ways to build trust at scale,
Mm-hmm.
because it'd be great to, like, be able to connect your prospects with reference calls all the time, but that's not tenable for so many reasons and leads to reference burnout. But written pull quotes also don't really move the needle
Yeah.
today. Like everyone knows that a lot of those quotes are just written and then signed off on and aren't even like what the person said. They're like, hey, like I wrote this, like, would you sign off on this? Like, yeah, sure. Whatever. Like, it's not how I'd say it, but yeah, sure. And like, so that doesn't really do it. But with video, you get tone of voice and you get body language, and 95% of human communication is nonverbal, right? So, that I think is, we're finally in the place, for better or for worse, where like the levels of trust, are so mediocre that we need to pull out the bigger social proof guns and to build trust. And really that is video, right? We can't, if you don't have any video testimonials on your landing page, like do not expect it to convert, as well as your competitors who has video testimonials that are aligned perfectly with the buyer persona that the audience is, right? And that's another really big principle to think about, is like, it's not, the people trust people like them, in terms of, their same job title, their same industry, right? So if you you really want to think about like getting the video testimonials. So like if in our case, we sell it to a lot of directors of marketing at 100, 150, 200 person SaaS companies. That's where we try to focus on getting video testimonials from, because the more similar the video testimonial is, or any piece of social proof, the more it is, naturally trusted by your prospect. Because like otherwise they're like, yeah, this is cool. Like I'm impressed that you got, the director of HR from McDonald's to give you a testimonial, but like that person does nothing like me in their job. They don't have the same challenges and run into the same problems as me. So like not really, relevant. Right. So it's like it's so important to have that relevancy and that parity between your prospect and your ICP and the people that you choose to feature in your video testimonials.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's move towards the last question before we go into the quick fire. So can you share a critical lesson, in your last almost, 10 plus years, which would be valuable for other founders out there?
Yeah, I think, man, there's so many critical lessons, but I think, probably one of them would just be to get, and I think people probably hear this, and I heard this, but like it's a get, better accounting and finance help than you think you need, like before you think you need it, especially as a agency or a services business, because a lot of agencies and software companies too, probably, especially if they're selling like annual contracts, can really mess up their revenue recognition. And, you want to get, basically my advice would be to get on like accrual basis accounting, like as soon as possible, and make sure you're doing it correctly as well. Specifically around your revenue recognition policies. Cause like in our case, like we thought we were doing accrual right. We weren't. So like those are two different things, right? It's like get on accrual and also do it correctly. And a lot of that comes down to having the right revenue recognition in place, especially with like the way you might be recognizing annual deals, and making sure all your rev rec is correct. So I think that's a big one for sure, especially if you don't have like an accounting and finance background at all, like which I have a creative background. I have originally like a video background. So like very far from my accounting and finance. And like you really, like, I know a lot of business owners love to think about this idea of like play to your strengths. So like focus on your strengths and like, bring up other people around you to fill in your weaknesses, but like only focus on your strengths. Like it's not worth to like bring up your weaknesses. Like I'd say like that's like just like any advice, like that's true in some situations, but like it's only true to a point in finance, in accounting. Like if you are weak in finance and accounting and you're a business owner, like you have to, especially as your business gets bigger and more complicated, like you really can't afford to be that weak in it. Like you have to figure out ways to improve on it, or else you're just, putting yourself in a situation where you can get blindsided, frankly. And I've definitely been in that situation, and so, yeah, that's probably my like biggest advice for myself. If I was going to if this was like me giving myself advice in 2020, that's probably what it would be.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, it's very practical advice. I've actually heard it quite a lot from other agency owners. Yeah. Cool. All right. So, quick fire. Who do you want to have on this podcast?
Let's see. I think I would love to get Jacob and Ryan from sales.co. I think they run a cool business, sales.co. They actually started a SaaS company, and then it made a few $1,000s in MRR, and then they eventually pivoted to an agency, and the agency is crushing it. So I think that's a pretty interesting story, for sure.
Cool. Awesome. I'll reach out to them. All right. What's a book you could recommend to other founders?
Yeah, I think a good book that I have, I see it up there on the bookshelf, is it's called The Road Less Stupid.
Yeah, I did read it.
It's by Keith Cunningham, and it's like it's just a list of like questions that are really thought provoking about your business, and they're really good questions. So I revisit that book, at a minimum annually. I think it's a really, really solid book.
Actually, that's what I need to start doing, revisiting books, because I keep reading new books, but it's actually really valuable to keep rereading old books.
100% agree. I'm working on that myself, but it's tough because there's always something new out, right?
Yeah. All right. And who is an entrepreneur you admire?
Let's see. Oof. I don't know. I mean, just looking at my bookshelf here. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I admire a lot of entrepreneurs, but I don't have any super good answer. Okay, actually, you know what? I will say James Dyson, the guy who like founded the Dyson vacuums, because it's incredible like how many of his how much failure he went through before success. It was just frankly like pretty inspiring, just like the number of prototypes and such.
Yeah, that's a good pick. What's a SaaS tool you use that not many people know of?
SaaS tool I use that not many people know of. I would say a lot of the tools we use are pretty standard. I'd say maybe not a ton of people know about like MetaMatch for metadata. I'll say that's we just started with that, so maybe that one.
Cool. And then final one, best advice ever received?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I guess single best advice I've ever received, I'm not sure, but I think advice that I've been thinking about, recently is, basically like, don't, be careful comparing yourself to other people, because you don't ever see like the full situation, and like you can't like pick and choose parts of other people's life, and take just that part. Like so say you're like, I want the success of Elon Musk. Like, well, do you also want all the other messy and tragic and like other parts of his life? Like, and that's obviously an extreme example, but even with like more modest successful entrepreneurs, right? I think there's a lot of I mean, it's very easy to compare yourself to other people, very easy to feel like what you're doing is never enough. But I think you whenever you're like, I want something something that person has, you I think have to realize is like you would have to, would you trade places completely with that person and have, would you take, the divorces that they've gone through? Would you take, whatever else, and like the answer is no, like you don't want that because like you can never just like pick one thing. And I think that is a good thing to think about, right? Because it's so easy to compare yourself to other people, especially as an entrepreneur. I have struggled with it a ton over the years. I think it's as I become slightly older, I'm 34 now. Like as I become slightly older and, have kids, I think I've kind of, my perspective on it has maybe gotten a bit broader. And I'm like, yeah, like, I think that's probably the best advice I've gotten recently.
Cool. Awesome. Look, it's been a pleasure. Super interesting. And if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. This has been a blast, Alexej. You can find out more about Testimonial Hero at testimonialhero.com. And you can hit me up on Twitter or follow me on Twitter. It's just at Sam Shepler. And LinkedIn, I'm also pretty active. Twitter, I share entrepreneurship insights or, backstory or just what I'm thinking about. LinkedIn, I share video testimonial, more like marketing actionable tips. So I think that's, people can check me out there, and then testimonialhero.com for the business.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Alexej.
Thanks for sticking around. If you want to see the show notes, please go to neoptima.com/SaaS podcast. Otherwise, see you at the next episode. Bye.